Good morning and welcome to a very special edition of the National Newspaper Publishers Association and Black Press of America's Let It Be Known. This morning, we're going to learn something very vital. Getting a diagnosis for a rare disease can be a long and difficult journey that in some cases may take years. This has been the case for many unsuspecting patients who may have seen a number of doctors for seemingly unrelated medical issues before being diagnosed with a disease called ATTRCM. Today, we are going to learn more about this rare disease that particularly affects African American men. We will bring you an important conversation with Pfizer Rare Diseases Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Kevin Williams. And of course, with us this morning is the National Newspaper Publishers Association's President and CEO, Dr. Ben Chavis. Good morning, Dr. Chavis.
Good morning, Stacy. And on behalf of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, on this Friday morning, I can't think of a better way to start. We have a long-term partnership with Pfizer, and certainly Dr. Kevin is also a columnist, writes a column for the Black Press USA. So we are all eager to hear this conversation with Dr. Kevin this morning.
Absolutely. Just a couple of headlines, Dr. Chavis. A couple of good news headlines. The Canton Fire Department in Ohio has made history by hiring its first ever African-American fire chief for the first time in 200 years. Akbar Bennett was promoted as its first ever African-American fire chief. Bennett, who is now 50 years old, has been with the Canton Fire Department for 29 years. He was a former combat medic with the Army National Guard before he joined the department in 1993. He served with his two brothers, becoming the first family to have done so. When he first took the exam to become a captain, he failed, but he did not give up, and he continued working harder and harder until he eventually became battalion chief and then division chief in 2015. So our congratulations to Chief Bennett. And also, Dr. Chavis, I don't know if you were muted there, but in the news as well is 42 players have been invited to a combine for football players from historically Black colleges and universities this weekend, Friday and Saturday in Birmingham, Alabama. 26 of the 26 have been scheduled to gather in North Miami last year, but the NFL had to cancel because of the pandemic. When the NFL called off the combines, many of the players were deprived of their best opportunity to go to the next level. But now they are given another opportunity. With the NFL draft going on right now, these HBCU athletes will have an opportunity to catapult themselves in the draft and perhaps sign a pro contract with an NFL team. So good news there, Dr. Chavis.
Yes, very good news. And of course, the NNPA, we also have a partnership with the NFL, Troy Vincent and all the leaders over there at the NFL. We salute them.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dr. Chavis, now let's learn more about ATTRCM, this rare disease. We will now bring our conversation with Dr. Kevin Williams. A very special edition. We have with us Dr. Kevin Williams from Pfizer Rare Disease to talk about a very rare heart condition, and particularly in African-American males. First, of course, we introduce our president and CEO, Dr. Ben Chavis. Good morning, Dr. Chavis.
Good morning, Stacy, and good morning, Dr. Kevin. On behalf of the National Newspaper Publishers Association, we're so pleased to have you with us again. You're not a stranger to the NNPA. You've spoken at a lot of our conventions, a lot of our conferences, and we are so pleased to focus this morning on this rare heart disease that disproportionately affects African Americans, particularly African American males. Tell us about this disease, Dr. Kevin.
So first, thank you so much for having me today on your program. I'm really excited to be speaking with you about ATTRCM, hereditary amyloid transthyretin cardiomyopathy. As you guys know, I'm the Chief Medical Officer for our Rare Disease Medical Affairs Organization at Pfizer, which I lead an organization of about 200 medical colleagues around the globe focused on our rare disease portfolio. Rare diseases being diseases that affect fewer than 200,000 people in the United States at any given time. One of the things that I think is important, because this is National Minority Health Month, is really to understand some of the conditions that have a disproportionate effect in the African American population. So today I'm here to talk to you about a heart condition that disproportionately affects African Americans, as you mentioned. And that heart condition is called hereditary amyloid transthyretin cardiomyopathy, or hereditary ATTRCM for short.
And Dr. Kevin, and thanks for giving us a nice short introduction about yourself, because I think it's important that people who may not know understand who Dr. Kevin is. Dr. Kevin also writes a column for the National Newspaper Publicists Association that we eagerly and always look forward to. But tell us a little bit more, Dr. Kevin, about ATTRCM and what causes this condition.
ATTRCM is an underdiagnosed condition that affects the heart and is associated with heart failure. It's the result of misfolded proteins, and these misfolded proteins then build up in the heart, in the body, and they cause organ dysfunction. When you think about ATTRCM, there are two subtypes of ATTRCM. There's what's called wild type, and then there's a hereditary form. Wild type ATTRCM is associated with aging. Most often it affects men who are over the age of 60, and it's thought to be the most common form of ATTRCM. Hereditary ATTRCM, on the other hand, is passed down from a relative, and it's caused by a gene mutation. The most common gene mutation associated with hereditary ATTRCM is called V122I, and it's found almost exclusively in Black Americans of African ancestry. And in fact, approximately 3 to 4% of African Americans in the US have this particular V122I mutation. Now, just because you have the mutation doesn't mean that you're going to develop disease. So of those 3 to 4%, there are some individuals with that mutation that may never develop symptoms of hereditary ATTRCM. Still, it's important to know, because of the fact that those individuals are susceptible to developing signs and symptoms and the disease ATTRCM.
And Dr. Kevin, can you underscore for us, highlight for us, the signs and symptoms of ATTRCM, the common signs and symptoms?
So if you think about ATTRCM, right, the fact that it has an impact on the heart means that often those patients are going to present with signs and symptoms that are associated with heart failure. So typically those signs you might think about are an irregular heartbeat, or fatigue, or shortness of breath. Sometimes they may also have some seemingly unrelated symptoms, such as carpal tunnel syndrome, or peripheral edema, which is swelling in the extremities, or a biceps tendon rupture. The reason that those things happen is because amyloidosis can deposit systemically, in other words, anywhere throughout the body, in any organ system. So even though we are focused on the deposition of amyloid in the heart, it can also deposit in other parts of the body, causing symptoms that are outside of the heart, such as carpal tunnel syndrome or biceps tendon rupture, as I mentioned.
And before I throw it back to Dr. Chavis, let me ask you this, Dr. Kevin. Once you receive an ATTRCM diagnosis, how can you determine the subtype?
Well, let me start by saying that diagnosing ATTRCM early is critical in managing the course of the disease. In the hereditary form, genetic testing and counseling can help determine if family members are at risk of inheriting the gene mutation that causes ATTRCM. And so the best way to understand that is to talk to your doctor and a genetic counselor who can advise you on the benefits or any concerns you might have related to genetic testing. Genetic testing and counseling programs may also be available to patients and family members at no cost.
Okay, and Dr. Chavis, I know you want to jump in.
Well, thank you. We have a lot of people watching this broadcast, Dr. Kevin, from around the United States. Where can people find information about ATTRCM? Is there a particular website? Where can people find out information about this particular disease?
So the best way to find out information about this disease is to talk to your physician or an experienced cardiologist. You can also go to yourheartsmessage.com, which has information on ATTRCM.
And Dr. Kevin, just again, that website one more time, because people, this is so important.
Yourheartsmessage.com. So YOURHEARTSMESSAGE, all one word, .com. Your Heart's Message.
Great, great.
And this is National Minority Health Month. As a focus on overall, one of the things that we found out in COVID, we have all these pre-existing conditions, particularly African Americans. And of course, heart disease is also a pre-existing condition. Mm-hmm. And now we're talking about a rare form of heart disease. Can you just say, and I know it's hereditary, but tell us how important it is for people to get regular medical checkups, and particularly because sometimes when you go to get a physical exam, it does not include seeing a cardiologist. So for people listening, what are your recommendations of how people can get the right exam so they can be told whether or not they have a chance of getting ATTRCM?
It's important to have a regular relationship with a physician. So, and to see your physician on a regular basis, particularly as we age. And it's important to be attuned to the symptoms that you may be experiencing throughout the course of your life, because those symptoms may alert a physician to ongoing issues that they need to investigate further. So it's very important to, when you have a conversation with your physician, to be as open and honest as possible and to relate any and all symptoms that you're experiencing, because even though you may be experiencing a symptom that you think is inconsequential or unimportant or not related to your heart, it's important to convey that information to the physician so that he has a full understanding of your complete medical history and is able to link whatever signs and symptoms you may be having together to paint a complete picture of what your health status is. That may help him or her, in terms of understanding whether or not you're at risk or maybe experiencing signs and symptoms of heart disease or heart failure.
Wow. And Dr. Kevin, what is your advice for Black Americans who may be experiencing symptoms and have a family history of heart disease?
So we know that Black people experience higher rates of heart disease than any other racial or ethnic group in the U.S. And heart disease and heart failure are common amongst Black Americans. So, as I was saying, it's really important for Black people who are experiencing any type of unresolved symptoms that may be related to heart disease, or that have a family history of cardiac issues, or have been diagnosed in the past with heart disease or heart failure. It's important to talk to their primary care doctor, important to talk to an experienced cardiologist, to ask them about ATTRCM, to help raise awareness, because this is an underdiagnosed disease, and not all physicians have a full understanding or awareness of this disease. So the more you understand about the disease and are able to ask the right questions of your physician, the better you'll be able to partner with him on identifying appropriate course of diagnosis and treatment.
Yeah, and again, highlight, if you will, for us, if someone suspects that they have ATTRCM, what exactly should they do?
So again, think about the signs and symptoms of the disease, and those being things such as an irregular heartbeat, or shortness of breath, or fatigue, or if you have a history of things that may seem unrelated, like carpal tunnel syndrome or biceps tendon rupture in your past, or if you have a family history of cardiac issues, or yourself have a history of heart disease or heart failure. All of those things may indicate that you have ATTRCM. So in the presence of any of those things, it's important to talk to your physician and to raise your questions and concerns with him, so that he can do an appropriate investigation if it is appropriate in that situation.
Yeah, and earlier you mentioned how even when it comes to physicians, they are not really educated, not all are educated on ATTRCM. Can you talk a little bit about that? How's that going? I know Pfizer is doing a whole lot to educate not just the public, but physicians as well.
So I think our efforts are progressing quite well. We've done a lot in the community, both the physician community as well as in the patient community, to raise awareness around ATTRCM and to ensure that physicians understand this disease, because of the fact that just as for patients, who may have symptoms of heart failure and may think that it's related to either their high blood pressure or their prior heart disease, physicians may also think that and may not investigate any further beyond chalking it up to other more common causes of heart failure. So it's important for us to continue to raise awareness about ATTRCM, how it can have signs and symptoms that are similar to other forms of heart failure. And so sometimes in patients, you have to take a more detailed history to look a little bit further and a little bit closer in order to identify the presence of ATTRCMs.
And isn't that an argument too, Dr. Kevin, for a patient to be his or her biggest advocate themselves?
Absolutely. And no matter what you're talking about, certainly for ATTRCM, but it is always incumbent upon the patient to arm themselves with knowledge, educate themselves, and to be their own best advocate for their health.
Yeah. And Dr. Chavis, I know that the NMPA, Black Press of America, continues to work hard with Pfizer to get the message out. Dr. Chavis, you want to jump in and talk with Dr. Kevin about ways in which we can get the message out even more?
Absolutely. First, we want to reaffirm the ongoing partnership between the National Newspaper Publishers Association and Pfizer. Dr. Kevin, we appreciate your leadership and appreciate what Pfizer is doing to help raise public awareness. You said that knowledge is power, and that's certainly true. Information is also power, and that's where the Black press comes in, because we want people to not only be aware of ATTRCM, but we also want them to have the knowledge and the information about it so they can make the right healthcare decisions. Overall, in Black America, health needs to be taken, I believe, more seriously. We need more information. And that is why the relationship between Pfizer and the NMPA is so important. And certainly in this program, we're going to show it on Black Press USA as well as our NMPA wide service. We're doing articles. We want you to know, Dr. Kevin, that we archive your columns on our YouTube as well as our newspaper archives at blackpressusa.com. So people can go to blackpressusa.com and get information about ATTRCM as well as look at those archive columns by Dr. Kevin. Dr. Kevin, I would like for you just to comment from your position at Pfizer how important it is to raise public awareness about ATTRCM, but also in general about healthcare matters with respect to African Americans and other people of color in the United States.
We know that there are healthcare disparities that exist for minority populations in the U.S., and that access to care can be more difficult and challenging for African Americans than for others in the population. Because of that, it's really critical for minority populations, African Americans, people of color, to be attuned to their health, to understand their signs and symptoms, to be proactive in seeking medical attention when they're experiencing anything that seems out of the ordinary, whether it's related to their heart or to any other bodily system it's important to stay on top of your health and to intervene sooner rather than later, because early intervention can make a huge difference in your health and your overall health status. So educate yourself, read, speak to your physician, understand your body, and don't be afraid to ask questions with your physician.
Fantastic. Well,
Very
Dr.
good.
Kevin Williams of Pfizer Rare Disease, talking about a rare heart disease. We really thank you and Pfizer for all the work that you're doing. And again, the NMPA stands at the ready to continue to get that message out. And for everyone who may have missed it, you can visit yourheartsmessage.com for more information and fill out a doctor discussion guide to help you at your next doctor's appointment. That's yourheartsmessage.com. Dr. Kevin, we appreciate you. We thank you.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
So a very important conversation there, Dr. Chavis. There's a couple of quick takeaways, advice. Always provide your complete medical history. Make your medical experience a two-way conversation, Dr. Chavis, and always ask questions. This ATTRCM is just another one of those battles that we have to face. Many of us have to face, but we don't have to suffer alone. It's important we reach out for real solid information. You said, Dr. Chavis, in that interview with Dr. Kevin, that knowledge is power.
Yes. And we thank Dr. Kevin Williams. We thank Pfizer. And this has been a great show this Friday morning on this rare heart disease that affects African Americans, particularly African American men. And we hope that this information that's been given out this morning will be utilized not only by all of our viewers, but their families, their relatives, their loved ones. This is a subject matter that we tremendously need to increase public awareness about.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, as you stated during the interview, the National Newspaper Publishers Association in conjunction with Pfizer Rare Disease will continue to bring our viewers, our readers, this vital information about ATTRCM and others. Bobby Henry pointed out, our publisher down in Florida at the Westside Gazette, pointed out during that broadcast that Dr. Kevin and Pfizer has also brought us vital information about sickle cell. So, we continue to look out, Dr. Chavis, for things that directly affect the African American community and people of color.
Absolutely. And we're going to address this rare heart disease at our national convention, June 23rd through 26th. It'll be virtual.
Yes. And remember to register for the 2021 NNPA Virtual Convention at www.virtualnmpa2021.com. Thanks to our chair, Karen Carter Richards. Thanks to Dr. Chavis. Thanks to the executive committee and all of NNPA that it is free this year. So register today. Don't wait. There's a lot of great stuff coming up at that convention. And also remember to watch a special NNPA Black Press of America interview at 4 p.m. today with the legend himself, Earth, Wind & Fire's lead singer, Philip Bailey. You can see it right here and over most of our social media channels, including Facebook, YouTube, and YouTube at Black Press USA TV, and Twitter at Black Press USA. And also remember to watch the Chavis Chronicles this and every Sunday morning on PBS TV and PBS World. Let it be known, habits, if not resisted, soon become necessities. Have a great weekend, everybody. Stay safe, stay well, and we will see you on Monday.